everybody. Welcome to the Kult of Met Personalities podcast here on Blog Talk Radio via the Ivy League Productions Network. We're the writers of KinersCorner.com, joined by the whole gang tonight, myself, Matt Faz, Nick Kalidas, Karen Cooper, Gene Anthony, and Rob Z. And we have a very special guest on the line who we're going to go right into tonight. Hall of Famer, former Met player, former Astro, Angel, and Ranger, and now the principal owner of the Texas Rangers. We welcome to the show Nolan Ryan. Nolan, how are you doing tonight?
Good. Good to be on your show.
Thank you. We really appreciate you taking a few minutes out tonight. I mean, just to start with, I mean, how are things going down at camp for you this year for the Rangers so far?
Well, I think it's, for where we are in camp, things have gone well. Overall, most people are healthy. We have very few injuries as to date, and so we feel good about that. And we've been on a six-man rotation because of the amount of pitching that we've come into camp with. We're trying to give everybody as many innings as we can, and so it's gone well. I've been happy with it.
Nolan, this is Gene Anthony. Good evening. I have a pitching question for you, so put on your pitching hat. We have a couple of guys on the Mets, and this is a Mets podcast, that throw really hard, but they can't channel this hard throwing into effective pitching. And early in your career, you threw the ball lights out. In fact, you ended your career throwing the ball lights out. At what point were you able to channel those walks and that little bit of effective wildness into some productivity? When and how did you channel that into the great pitcher that you were?
Well, I think with young pitchers that are blessed with great arms, the majority of those guys usually have a tendency to be overthrowers, and until they get consistent with their deliveries and they're able to control their deliveries and repeat them, then they're going to start being more consistent. And the problem with it, a young pitcher that's an overthrower, when they get into trouble, their tendency is to want to overthrow, and they're going to have to mature to the point that they can control themselves and not do that. And so that's why everybody looks for the great arms, and when you see a live arm like that, everybody feels like that if they can get these players to start being consistent with their deliveries, then you'll start seeing some good things happening.
Nolan, it's Nick. I actually wanted to take you back a bit. Obviously, any Met fan that's grown up watching this team has really had this fantasy about what it would have been like to see you through the 70s, gun for us. And, looking statistically and at clips of you, I mean, you had this beautiful game in 1970, this one-hit, 15 strikeout masterpiece. And the stats kind of show that you were quite dominant when you were on the mound, a bit wild maybe, but just outright nasty. And my question to you is, do you feel that you were given enough starting reps over the 5 seasons you were here to develop any kind of consistency? And if not, why do you feel like it just kind of never clicked until you were able to go to California?
Well, what happened with the difference between my years with the Mets and then my years with California Angels was that during the whole time I was with the New York Mets, I was that was during the Vietnam conflict, and I was in a top priority reserve unit in Houston, Texas. And so I flew home every other weekend for my reserve duty. And because of that, I never fished on a regular basis. And if my turn in the rotation came up on the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday that I was gone, then I would be skipped and not come up until my next turn. And so there was no consistency in my pitching, not only with the rotation, but also the fact that I would be missing so much time. And so I was so inconsistent that being an overthrower was not a good combination. And then when I went to California the first year I was there, I had served my 6 years in the reserves and had been discharged, and so I didn't have that obligation hanging over me, and so I was able to pitch out there on a 4-day rotation, and that's when things started coming together.
Mr. Ryan, this is Sharon Cooper. I have a question regarding your later career, namely when you were on the Houston Astros and playing the Mets in the 1986 NLCS. In the book The Bad Guys Won by Jeff Pearlman, your former teammate Charlie Kerfeld was quoted as saying he truly felt that the Houston Astros should have been the team playing in the 1986 World Series. And I know you might be a bit biased since you actually played on that team, but what were your feelings on that team and ultimately facing the team you kind of grew up with and you won a championship with years before? And how far do you feel that your Houston Astros team could have gone that year?
Well, I really believe that the New York Mets, the second half of the '86 season, were the best team in baseball, and I believe that we were right there with them. But the way they played the second half of that season, I really felt like that they were the most balanced ball club. They were a veteran ball club, and they really didn't have any holes when you looked at them. So when I look at that ball club, I felt like they were the best team in baseball, and then that we were probably the second team behind them in the National League. Were we very close as a ball club? Yeah, we were, but I think that offensively they were a better ball club, and they had as much pitching and balance in their pitching as we did.
Mr. Ryan, this is Robert. You have a very interesting perspective because you got to go from being the player to now being the owner with the Texas Rangers. And what I would like to know is, with that experience that you now have, do you look back at your trade from the New York Mets and look at it in a different light than you did at the time that you were traded?
Well, I think when you're traded, you feel like when you're a player and you're traded, I think you feel like a team either has given up on you or they don't feel like that you can help them. But now that when I look at it from the perspective of management and ownership, my perspective is different on it. We're trying to improve the ball club. We look at ways that we can improve it, and we're constantly doing that. And when we trade somebody, does that mean that we've given up on them or that we don't think they're capable of helping the ball club? No, we don't. What it does is it's strictly about what is the need of our ball club and how can we improve our ball club. So, yeah, it's a different perspective that I have now than when I was a player. And I think when, as a player, when you get traded, I think at times it's disappointing that you feel like mainly the organization that you came up with, and you really feel a commitment and ownership to them. You just, I think for the first time when that happens, you probably get your feelings hurt a little.
We're talking with Hall of Famer Nolan Ryan, who's now principal owner of the Texas Rangers. And Nolan, you have a unique perspective, being a great pitcher and running a franchise. And and I've always marveled at and really been praising how you guys develop pitching out in Texas. You have had one of the best track records the last several years of developing young pitching talent. You've really done it kind of going the opposite end of the spectrum from the baseball norm, where it seems like pitchers are babied these days and strict pitch counts. I mean, you let pitchers develop and pitch deeper into games and deeper pitch counts. I mean, can you take us through a little bit of your philosophy into developing some of these young pitchers?
Well, what we did was once we decided that we were the first thing we needed to commit to was strengthening our pitching, not only in our rotation but in our bullpen, that we were going to ask our starters to start throwing more coming into spring training next year, throwing live batting practice, throwing more off the mound. And then we were going to also take their conditioning to another level so that physically they would be able to handle the workload, and in their minds that they would be able to pitch more innings and throw more pitches. And so it was a combination of getting them to understand what our approach was going to be and getting them to buy into it and want to pitch deeper into the game. And by doing that, then it took some pressure off our bullpen, and so it was what we were doing the previous year was the All-Star break. We were having to go to the bullpen so much because our starters weren't pitching deep enough in the game that we were wearing our bullpen down, and so we just felt like overall it would be better for the ball club, and so it has paid off for us.
No, and I have to ask this as a Mets fan, and knowing this situation between two semi-laid-back guys but intense competitors, the Robin Ventura incident, have you guys spoken about that afterwards? And how will that be now that he's back in baseball as a manager for you?
Well, we're going to be respectful of Robin, and we open with them in Arlington, and so it's a good opportunity to move on from that. And no, I haven't seen him because of the last year of my career, and that was the last time that I saw the White Sox at the time that it happened. And so I certainly have harbor no hard feelings towards that. And it's just one of those things that happens in the game and the heat of the moment. And I have to believe that Robin and myself have certainly moved on from there.
I guess I'll wrap it up right here because I know that you've got to go, and we obviously are incredibly thankful you're spending a few minutes with us. My thought is this. We recently had both Jerry Koosman and Gary Gentry on, and they talked about frustration watching current pitchers not going along into games and what's considered a quality start these days, and having the ability to actually impact it. What are you doing? Now, I know I've read some things about it, but, I mean, at this point, what are you doing to try to push the envelope in that regard, maybe turn the clock back a bit on how pitchers actually approach starts?
Well, what we do is that we think it's important. Everyone has a pitch limit. I'm not calling it a pitch count, it's a pitch limit, and each one of us are different, and so what our capabilities are different. And so it's important for our pitching coach and our manager to learn the starting pitchers so they have an understanding of pretty much what that number is and where they can take the ball club. And so what happens is that maybe Kobe Lewis his limit is somewhere around 100 pitches, and Derek Holland may be 125 pitches. That's what we found with C.J. Wilson last year, that C.J. was good for 120 to 125 pitches, and he threw an awful lot of pitches early in the game, and so he didn't pitch us into the seventh and eighth inning as much as you thought he might by throwing 120 to 125 pitches. But if you have somebody like Kobe Lewis, who is a control pitcher and maximizes his pitches, with 100 pitches, he can pitch you into the seventh inning. So our goal is to try to get the most out of our pitchers and hope that they can pitch us late into the game and give us an opportunity not to have to go to the bullpen 3 times in that particular game. And if we can do that, cut down the number of relievers that we have to use in a game, then our bullpen is going to last longer.
Well, Nolan, we really thank you for spending a few minutes with us tonight and taking the time to chat with us, and wish you the best of luck in the upcoming season.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks.